All right, so this is the time of the year where I start hearing from NFL scouts and player personnel people in the NFL talking about the NFL draft. And from what I'm hearing, the Georgia Bulldogs are going to crush it once again this April in the 2025 NFL draft. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Which Georgia Bulldogs are expected to go in the first round, which could go in the top 2 or 3 rounds, and how many Bulldogs will be selected in the NFL draft in just a couple of months. So let's dig into it, right? Now, the first 2 guys that are probably coming off the board, Michael Williams on the edge and Jalen Walker, the best linebacker last year in college football. I think both will probably go within the top 12, but I'm hearing more and more that both guys are looking like top 10 picks. Now, it depends on the team and the team's needs on which player goes first, but I tell you what, NFL scouts love these guys. NFL GMs love these guys, not only because they played at Georgia and played there at a high level. And we'll start with Michael Williams first. It's the length. It's the motivation that he brings. The competitiveness is what I really meant to say. He's been productive, battling through injuries. He had 67 career tackles, 21 and a half tackles for a loss, and 14 sacks with 3 forced fumbles. Former 5-star who absolutely lived up to the hype. When they needed him most on third down, that's when he really attacked the quarterback and did it at a high level. Even when he didn't get to the quarterback, he was in the backfield. He was causing pressure, causing havoc, and forcing incomplete passes and so on, right? Dude lived in the backfield, and he also made sure that he was one of the best run defenders in college football. I think that's what he did best at Georgia. You can talk about the 21 and a half tackles for a loss, the 14 sacks. Those are pretty solid numbers in just 3 seasons, but that guy did a lot behind the scenes that helped other players around him, like Jalen Walker, make big plays. But you can't teach length, and you can't teach that love for football that I know Michael Williams has. He is a dog in every sense of the word, and the potential is there. The size. Everyone that I've spoken with at the NFL level really, really loves his upside and what he brings to the table. I would not be surprised if he was a top 10 pick. Same with Jalen Walker. If you need a versatile defender, a guy who can rush the quarterback, or play in the middle of the field, run down the ball carrier, Jalen Walker is your guy. He does everything well. He's the Buckus Award winner for a reason. 6'3", 245, just built like a Greek god. I mean, he's incredibly gifted from a physical standpoint, but the versatility stands out too. He can play in that 9 technique, or you can move him in the middle of the field. He can cover, he can blitz, he can stop the run, he can run you down, Arch Manning, etc. All the quarterbacks that tried to escape the pocket and make plays. No, Jalen Walker was hunting them down. He's smart, he's instinctive, one of the best overall players in the draft. He's not getting past 15, and I think that he has a good chance to be a top 10 pick. He had 89 total tackles in 3 years, 18 tackles for a loss, 12 and a half sacks, 3 sacks alone against Texas and Austin. Dude is legit. Then you have Malachi Starks, and I think he will kind of fall later into the first round, but he's had an outstanding career. He was a Thorpe Award finalist. He was a second-team All-American last year, 6'1", 205, and I think he'd be the first to tell you, yeah, maybe I could have played a little better last year. He was still reliable, right? There were times when it felt like he wasn't at his best or had played better in year 2 than year 3. But, I mean, second-team All-American speaks for itself. 197 tackles in 3 seasons, 5.5 tackles for a loss, 6 interceptions. The high ceiling, the ball skills, the instincts, the size. I mean, dude can absolutely fly at 205. And as we know, he showed it against Oregon and Clemson. He can make a play on the ball as well as any defensive back in this class. So, I think he's going to be a first rounder. He's not getting past the Eagles. If he's sitting there at the end of the first round and the Philadelphia Eagles are saying, hey, Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia, fell to us, there's no way he gets past the Eagles. So I'm expecting 3 NFL first-round picks for the Georgia Bulldogs in a couple months. After that, I think a couple offensive linemen are coming off the board. Tate Ratledge, multi-year starter at right guard. Dylan Fairchild, who I think is going to put up monster numbers on that bench press and the combine. That's my guy. I told y'all when he was in high school, when he committed to Georgia, this guy's an NFL guard. And I think both these guys will be picked probably second, maybe third. I'd be really surprised if those guys made it out of the third round. But 2 guards that I know a lot of people like because they played a lot. They're experienced and they compete and they're strong. There's a lot to like about both of them. So those are two guys that I think will easily be picked kind of in the middle of the draft. I think Trevor Etienne at running back will be picked. Kind of a loaded draft at running back. He's going to get picked eventually. Probably not in the first few rounds. He rushed for 609 yards, 9 touchdowns. But he's a guy who can make plays out of the backfield. Probably something that Georgia should have done with him a little bit more this past season. But he's shifty. He's got some explosiveness to him. I don't know if he's a top 10 running back in this draft. That's a big reason why I thought he would come back to Athens. But he will get picked by someone eventually. So he's a guy that I expect to hear his name called. Smile Munnin, I think, is going to get picked. Again, I don't know if he's a first or second day type, probably third, fourth, maybe fifth round. I think a lot has to do with the interview process and how he does in the combine, but there's a lot to like about him for sure. 6'3", 225, made 213 total tackles in his career, 8 sacks, and he had that 1 interception in the 2022, SEC championship. 57 tackles last year, 3 sacks, a career high 13 tackles against Georgia Tech in that 8 overtime victory. So while he played through injuries, he was still a very consistent defender throughout his career at Georgia, especially when he was healthy. Former 5-star who, again, probably lived up to the hype if you consider the experience and the production that he put up over the last several years. Real quick, bad hair day for me. I got both of my kids napping, so every minute matters. You parents know I don't have time to take a shower, but I know I smell bad. I'm sure I look awful, but hey, if I have any time when my kids are sleeping, I'm working instead of showering. So I do apologize. My hair's a mess, but we're going to keep rolling. We're going to keep rolling right through. A couple wide receivers that I think are going to get drafted. I think Tom Lovett will be drafted. He had 113 catches for 1,220 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Those are respectable numbers. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy, and he did have his share of drops this past season. I'm not saying he's going to be picked in the first four rounds. 5th, 6th round, he's available still. I can see a team picking him. I think through 7 rounds, he will get picked. And this might sound crazy, but I think Aaron Smith is going to get drafted. These NFL GMs, these coaches, they have massive egos, and they're going to see that speed and say, I can turn him into a wide receiver. We can teach him. We can get those hands under control because teams don't want to pass up on speed. You don't want to pass up on speed, especially if you need speed, right? If you are looking for guys who could stretch the field, I think he's worth the risk in some of those later rounds. Yes, the hands are what they are, and that's what Georgia fans are going to remember. But he did have his best season in 2024, 48 catches, 817 yards, 4 touchdowns. In his career, he had 68 catches for 1,356 yards and 10 touchdowns. So he was more productive, but the drops were obviously still there. That's something he's got to work on. But I would be surprised if every one of these teams went 7 rounds and decided, you know what, we're going to pass on that speed, right? We're not good enough coaches to teach him how to be a better receiver. Someone's going to take a chance on him, and I believe someone's going to get picked. So those are 9 that I would say pretty much guaranteed to be selected. Not 100%, but I feel pretty good. I'd be really surprised if those 9 didn't hear their name called. After that, you still have some guys who will probably be picked, but I'm just not completely sure. I think Nazir Stackhouse will get drafted. Again, I don't think it's within the first few rounds. I think Ty Ingram Dawkins, he left early for a reason. Probably should have come back, but he feels good enough that he's going to get picked too. Would not surprise me at all if he got drafted. Same with Warren Brinson, who might be like a 50-50 drafted, non-drafted guy, but I can totally see it in the late rounds. He's a guy who really flashed big playability, and every once in a while, dude would blow up a play in the backfield. So he's got a little bit of solid tape out there. And again, there were times when he looked like a future NFL defensive lineman. I think he was actually pretty decent in the Senior Bowl too, so I think that helped his cause. Wouldn't surprise me if all 3 of those guys were drafted though. I can see it. On the offensive line, you've got 2 more guys, Jared Wilson at center, Xavier Truss at right tackle. Both of those guys, I'm not willing to say they're definitely getting drafted, but I can see it. You need a center in the late rounds. Jared Wilson was fine last year. He wasn't Cedric Van Pran, but he was fine. And Xavier Truss, he's got size. Can't teach size. And he's got some good tape out there, some bad tape. But I think that size and the experience playing at a high level in the SEC for like 20 years, feels like he's been on the team. He's been on the team forever. I think some NFL GMs and coaches are going to like that and, add a lot of mass and size and depth to their offensive line. I think Xavier Truss will probably get drafted. Same with Jared Wilson, but I'm not 100% sure. And then you've got a couple more guys. Chaz Chambliss was not invited to the Combine, which is wild to me. He turned out better than I think most Georgia fans thought. 87 career tackles, 17 tackles for a loss, 9 sacks. He is a better pass rusher than people still realize. He doesn't have elite length or explosiveness, but he is tough, he's gritty, and he knows how to shed blocks, and he knows how to finish and get to the quarterback. There will be players drafted who are not as good as Chaz Chambliss. Still early here. I've only had 1 cup of coffee. Chaz Chambliss. I think I can see him getting drafted. I don't think so this second, but I think a good GM will say, hey, this kid's made a lot of plays at Georgia. We're going to give this kid a chance. Right now I'm leaning no, but I would be really happy for him. I think he had a pretty decent career at Georgia, no doubt about it. And then Dirty Dan. Dan Jackson can play at the NFL level. He should be drafted. It was criminal that he was not invited to the NFL Combine. The guy has great instincts. He's experienced. He's made a lot of plays, 140 total tackles throughout his long career at Georgia, 4.5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and the game-saving turnover against Georgia Tech this past year. If he doesn't hit Haynes King and force that fumble that's recovered by Chaz Chambliss, I believe, if I remember correctly, Georgia loses that game. They lose that game without that big forced fumble by Dan Jackson. The guy makes plays, and he is experienced, and he will knock you out. He's one of the hardest hitters in the SEC. Couldn't believe it that he was not invited to the Combine. It is criminal. So I just talked about 16 guys. 16 guys. I'm thinking at least 12 are going to be picked in April's NFL Draft. 9 to possibly 10 guaranteed for me. 3, I think, easy first rounders. 2 guys in the top probably 10. So yeah, Ohio State's going to have a lot of guys. Texas, Michigan, Alabama, the regulars, right? The consistent programs year after year, you know who they are. They're going to have guys too. So I'm not saying that Georgia's going to have more than Ohio State or more than Texas or, more than so-and-so. But they're going to be up there. And at the end of the NFL Draft, Georgia will be towards the very top of programs who had the most kids selected. It's going to be a really good NFL Draft for Kirby Smart and the Dogs. A lot of Bulldogs are going to hear their names called and see their names come up at the bottom of the ticker. I think it's going to be another outstanding showing. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. But the Dogs could be the talk of the NFL Draft once again. Wouldn't be the first time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the website.